9 things to do before we close out 2024.
Brian, I am so excited about this because we know just how powerful a little bit of planning can do. And there are some significant decisions that you can make right here at the end of the year that can have large impacts, not just this year, but well into your financial future.
But Bo, I think there's actually, before we get into all these tips, tricks, and things that they should do, everyone should subscribe to the Money Guy Show.
That is one thing you should do right now before another moment passes, because we love knowing that you are out there so that we can continue creating content just for you. All right, Brian, you want to talk about some things that should happen before the year? And as a tax guy, I got to believe that this is like near and dear and true to your heart.
Well,
right?
Look, we've evolved because we used to do this year-end show, and we would, let me go ahead and give you the Cliff Notes version, is we'd say defer income if you can, accelerate your deductions, because all of it was the purpose of minimizing the taxes to be paid. But we realized a lot of this stuff needs to be mindset stuff because we go through we close out years, we hit New Year's resolutions. People need something bigger that actually brings you into focus what's going on with your financial life. And once again, we land on the foundation of all good financial decision-making with the financial order of operations.
That's exactly right. So as we walk through some of these steps, we're going to talk about how it falls into the food. So even as we dive into the very first one, we think about the things you ought to do before year end. The very first thing we think you should do before you begin thinking about building wealth and growing and moving towards the future is you want to make sure that you have your risks covered. So have you yet this year counted your cash?
And cash is such an important thing for the financial order of operations. It's not just one step, it's 2 steps. And if you read Millionaire Mission and you really want to see the origin story, you'll see why this is such an important thing, is because cash is actually that margin, that buffer that's going to keep you safe and sane through the chaos that the world's going to throw at you.
So as you think about this, have you done step 1? Do you have your highest deductible covered? Do you know what your deductibles are? What's my health deductible? What's my auto deductible? What's my home insurance, homeowner's deductible? Do I have that highest amount in cash? And then if I've done that, and then I've gone to step 2, and I've gone to step 3, is my emergency fund fully funded? Do I know what it would cost me to run my household for 3 to 6 months, covering my living expenses? And do I have that in liquid cash readily available should I need to get access to?
And by the way, cash is also one of those things. If you have any upcoming big things, I'm often, when people tell me they have a goal that is 3 months, 6 months, 9 months in the future, I'm like, that needs to be liquid. So if you've got an engagement ring, if you've got the family vacation, that's not investment money. That's money that needs to be liquid and in cash.
And the last question you should answer is, if you're going to hold cash, you might as well have it working for you. Where's it sitting? Do you just have your cash sitting in a checking account earning next to nothing, or do you have it working for you? Because realistically, Brian, if you let your cash work for you, it can have a huge impact.
Yeah, don't sleep on this. As I'm always amazed at how many very smart people, they just take their cash for granted. You can make over 4%, close to 5% still on your cash if you take an active role in choosing to let your money work for you.
Yeah, you can think about it. If you just let it sit there and you're earning interest and it's in like a standard checking account only earning something like 0.5%, you might make $100, $140 a year. If instead you had that emergency fund, let's say it was $30,000 sitting in that account you're talking about, making over 4.5%, that could be $1,300. Now you're talking about like vacation money just for your cash sitting there. Don't sleep on it. Make sure that your cash is working for you.
Now, let's talk about, if we're going to take advantage of cash working for you, let's talk about actually getting that free money. If you talk about step 2 of the financial order of operations, everybody's always curious. Why in the world? We know credit card debt is over 20+% for a lot of people. How in the world can you guys have you investing in your employer plan before you even pay off the 20+% credit card debt? Well, it's easy. If your employer is offering you 50% for those 50 cents on every dollar, or 100% for the dollar for dollar contributions, you got to get in there and get that free money from your employer.
And don't just get some of it, get all of it. I'm amazed at how often, Brian, we go do 401k presentations and the employer might say, hey, if you put in 5%, we'll put in 4%. And we ask the participants, oh, how much you doing in your 401k? Oh, I'm doing 3%. And we're like, what? 3%? You're leaving money on the table. It is literally free money. So have you reviewed how your 401k works? Do you know what the maximum contribution you can put in to maximize that match is? And are you doing that? If you're not, you should consider changing that right now.
Yeah, and by the way, it's not just our clients that we're talking to when we go do these 401ks. Vanguard recently found out 34% of people are not maxing out their 401ks, meaning getting the match. So get in there, get that free money. And by the way, if you don't have a matching contribution, maybe your plan or your employer is not caught up to the times and do that, it's okay. Skip to step 3. You can pay off that high interest debt.
Now, and don't forget, free money. We're talking a lot about like in retirement plans and 401k contributions. Free money is not just that. You may participate in, or you may work for a company that has an employee stock purchase plan where you potentially can buy your employer stock at a discounted price. Well, if you can buy something that's worth $100 and you only have to pay $85 for it, that $15 savings is free money. So if you have access to an employee stock purchase plan through your employer, you may want to consider that too. And you may want to prioritize that because that's likely a step 2 item inside the financial order of operations.
Now, remember, we do want to keep you safe on this, though. Don't let all of your employment income, your net worth income, your net worth and everything reside only with your employer. Mm-hmm. This is one of those things, if you lean into this, make sure you are diversifying it, create a process, but take advantage of that free money.
And then as you are, even just doing the minimum contribution to get that full match, have you done the research? Have you done the analysis to determine, should I do pre-tax contributions or should I do Roth contributions? If you're looking for how to decide, it's pretty simple. You just want to look at your marginal tax rates, both on the federal side and the state side. If you add them up and they're under 25%, then you may want to consider doing the Roth contributions inside of your retirement account. If it's between 25 and 30%, it gets a little more nuanced based on your unique account structure, time horizon, age, specific items. But if you're over 30%, when you add up your marginal federal and marginal state, that tax savings is so valuable this year that you may want to consider doing pre-tax because every dollar that you put in can save you 30 cents in taxes. It's a huge tax savings. You want to make sure you're optimizing and maximizing when you make your contributions.
And you're hoping you have an arbitrage situation when you retire, because we know retirees, when you have less earned income, a lot of times you pay a lot lower taxes.
Yep.
So that's why you're taking advantage of that tax planning opportunity. But if you are hearing us talk about this, you go, I don't even know what my marginal tax rate is. I would encourage you to go to moneyguy.com/resources and you too can download our tax guide.
All right, Brian, we're talking about some things that you ought to do before we get to the end of 2024. This next one is an important one because, again, we're talking about the foundation. We're talking about taking care of the necessary things to take care of. Have you gotten your liabilities under control, or do you even know what your liabilities are? We love this time of year because this is the time that we get to do net worth statements. It's like our Christmas morning because it is so exciting to line up everything that you own and then line up everything that you owe and see where you stand this year. Well, specifically when it comes to what you owe and you're doing your net worth statement, you might uncover you have some bad actors on there that you should potentially be knocking out.
Look, we're so into this. We're like, let's give away a free resource to everybody. So if you go to moneyguy.com/resources, you can download a free template that will help you do your net worth if you need to get on this annual tradition. And by the way, if you're wondering, well, what items should I track on this net worth statement? How about the changes? Because maybe I'm in year 2, I'm in year 3, and I want to have a dashboard view. Am I paying down my debt? Is my net worth growing? How does that compare to my income? We'd encourage you to take it a step further and maybe go to learn.moneyguy.com, and we actually have a net worth tool that will help you take it to the next level and actually be able to look at the data and have that dashboard view.
And the second question, as you look at all of those different liabilities, as you're thinking through this, you ought to answer the question, how much bad debt can you get rid of by year end? I mean, you've heard us say this all the time. If you have credit card debt, that is an absolute non-starter. You have to knock that out. But there are other types of debt that you want to figure out, how do I prioritize? What do I think about car loans? What do I think about student loans? How should I attack those? And do those even belong in step 3 of the financial order of operations?
Yeah, I mean, car loans, we actually put together some specific rules for every one of these things. And I think it's interesting, like car loans, we did have a spread on this because we understand, yes, cars are going to be a necessity for a lot of people to get to their JOB to start that wealth building process. But we were like, let's give some guidelines. And age does come into play. The interest rate comes into play. And we even put out some rules that tie into if you get those offers from the manufacturers where it's 0%, it still doesn't change the fact that we want you to respect 23H. You're going to want to pay these cars off within 3 years because cars depreciate rapidly and you don't want to be driving around in your wealth.
But it's not just cars that might be showing up on your net worth statement. You might also have student loans and you're trying to figure out how do I prioritize that? And again, we have a rule of thumb to help you navigate this. If you're in your 20s and your student loans are greater than 6%, you may want to consider prioritizing paying off those student loans. If they're below 6%, we would argue that your money could work harder for you elsewhere. So you may want to consider that. In your 30s, the number drops down to 5%. In the 40s, it drops down to 4%. Again, it's all about commanding your army of dollar bills. So have you done a net worth statement? Have you lined up all of your liabilities? And do you know which ones you should be attacking right now and which ones are okay to persist on the net worth statement into future years?
Yeah, get that debt under control. We talk about it all the time. I feel like Americans have gotten way too comfortable with debt. That's one more reason if you do the net worth statement, I think you're going when you see it front and center, and then you even compare that to the wealth multiplier and seeing what every dollar has the potential to become, you'll look at it a little differently and you won't fall into that trap.
All right, Brian, the next thing that we want to talk about as it comes to year end, there are things we want to think about. And I think this is maybe probably your favorite year-end planning item, or at least one of them. Have you reviewed, have you maximized all of the tax-free savings opportunities that are currently available to you?
Let me give you a clue. If the government is going to restrict who can put money into these type of accounts, if they're going to restrict how much you can put into these things, you probably ought to perk up and go, wow, this must be something pretty sweet if I'm going to potentially, yes, I don't get a tax deduction on Roth contributions, but I get tax-free growth. And then you think about if you love tax-free growth, HSAs, because they actually take what Roth accounts do to a whole new level because they're triple tax advantage.
Yep.
With a health savings account, as long as you have that high deductible health plan, because that is a requirement, you're going to get a deduction on the contribution. You're going to be able to watch it grow tax-free. And if you use it on qualified medical expenses, you're going to be able to pull it out completely tax-free. That's an amazing opportunity.
So some of the questions, if you have access to an HSA that you may want to be thinking about this year is, have I maxed it out? The single contribution limit is $4,150 this year. The family contribution is $8,300. Well, not only have I maxed out this year, but as I think about going into next year and I get into open enrollment, what is the best health insurance for my family or for me in this next year? Do I want to stay on the high deductible plan to be able to be HSA eligible, or might there be another opportunity? Might I ought to take advantage of one of the other health insurance options at my employer? Just because you did something this year does not mean that you should default to it next year. You want to make sure you think through this again so you can be maximizing your dollars.
Yes. By the way, this is a year-end planning show. And fortunately, end of the year, fourth quarter is when most of you have open enrollment on your health insurance. Take an active role. Bo said it. Don't just assume what you did last year is going to be good for this year. I want you to think about, do the homework and figure out, is there going to be some family changes? Meaning, are you doing family planning to the fact that you think you might have children next year? Pay attention. Are you reaching a certain age? Hey, I crossed over the big 5-0. I knew that there were going to be some medical requirements. I took an active role and said, hey, let's look at our health insurance and choices a little differently, knowing I'm going to be leaning a little extra to make sure I do all that preventative stuff.
And then obviously, we want you to be, if you're going to take advantage of an HSA and you're going to consider this part of your financial order of operation, we want you to be part of that 4% that actually invest those dollars to grow for the future so that you're truly getting that tax-free growth and ultimately those tax-free distributions. So health savings accounts are one type of tax-free account we want you to maximize, but then there are also Roth IRAs. As we're coming up to the end of this year, have you maximized? Are you set up to put the full $7,000 into your Roth IRA? Or if you're over 50, are you doing $8,000? Or are you even going to be eligible for Roth this year? This might be a great time to figure out, oh, wow, I'm getting a year-end bonus I was not anticipating. Or I got RSUs that vested that I had not counted on. Man, I put money in a Roth. I was not eligible to do that. Do I need to start unwinding that? Do I need to go back and re-pull out those contributions so that I don't run afoul of the Roth IRA contribution thresholds?
Yeah, don't sleep on the Roth and the tax-free growth. Tremendous opportunities for wealth building with this step.
All right, Brian. So as we're thinking about that, we're maxing out step 5. We're doing the Roth IRAs. We're doing the HSAs. Another thing you might want to think about once you've kind of worked through these is, okay, one of the single greatest tools in my tool belt to legally hide money from the government, to save for the future, is my employer-sponsored retirement account. Have I hit the max? What am I doing inside my 401k, 403b, 457? And should I be doing more before we get to year end?
It's worth sharing and reminding everyone. The first account that most people cross into 7-figure status with is that employer 401k. This one is because you can put so much into it, and you also get some incentives from your employer. Guys, this is a year-end planning show. You might have some bonuses coming up, and it's worth the extra homework to reach out to your employer and say, hey, can I put a different savings percentage on my upcoming bonus versus what I've put on my normal compensation? And you might be able to max out those retirement contributions as that year-end bonus pays out.
So some accounts will let you go back in time, like a SEP IRA if you're a small business owner, or your Roth or your HSA. You can fund it for a prior year. 401ks, if you're a participant in the 401k, don't allow that. If you're going to max it out, if you're going to hit the 23,000 or the 30,500, it has to happen before December 31st because it has to be reflected on your W-2. So if you don't get those dollars in there this year before the end of the year, you're not going to get them in there. So make sure you're doing the math, recognize what is it that you need to be putting into max out. Is that something you can squeeze in there before we close out this year?
And I have one little nerdy tax comment, is that year-end bonuses, you might want to do a little preemptive homework to figure out how close are you to the next tax bracket. Because you might be able to look at your year-end bonus, load up the traditional 401k to keep yourself in that lower tax bracket. Or maybe you're at the point you can no longer do Roth IRA contributions without doing backdoor gymnastics to get it in there. This could be another planning opportunity. Don't sleep on that. Take an active role in being a participant in maximizing your retirement opportunities.
Now, a lot of people ask us this question. Okay, guys, I'm going to max out. I'm going to do it. And by the way, when I do that, I'm going to cross over 25%. That's great. That's awesome. You don't have to go to step 7. You don't have to continue saving more if you're hitting 25%. But if you max out and you've not hit your 25% yet, then we want you to go to step 7. Then we want you to go to hyperaccumulation. Just because you filled up that 401k, 403b, 457 bucket does not mean that you cannot do additional savings above and beyond that in a regular, normal after-tax account. And that leads us to the next thing that we want to make sure you're doing. Make sure as you close out this year, you finish the drill. Have you hit your 25%?
Yeah, I mean, we titled this hyperaccumulation, and people go, what in the world? What is hyperaccumulation? I always remind people this means that we are taking life and our savings behavior beyond 25%. And this is the part, I get excited about this because a lot of what is driven steps 1 through 6 of the financial order of operations is maximizing not only the cash reserves, not only maximizing the employer-free money, but it's also just all the tax-favored ways that you can save money. Step 7, what I love is this lets you, as the commander of your army of dollar bills, start to think about how am I actually going to use this money? It's not just about the saving. It's also where are we going? Begin with the end in mind. I love that we get to be so strong and deliberate with what beyond 25% means.
So let's talk about what counts in that. What counts towards the 25%? Well, obviously we're talking about employer-sponsored plans, 401ks, 403bs, 457s, our IRAs, Roth or traditional, our HSAs, if we're investing those dollars. If we're putting money in HSA and immediately using those, that does not count as part of our 25%. It's only if it's growing for the future. If we have pension contributions going in, employer match, if your income is at such a place that you're allowed to include that in the 25%, maybe you have an ESOP that you participate in or an employee stock purchase plan. And then exactly what you said, Brian, your taxable account, just regular, normal, after-tax brokerage account is a great place to be putting money for the future. You can add up all of these different accounts that you're able to save to, and that was where you want your 25% to be. And the question people will ask, okay, guys, I get this, but I've listened to other folks, and they tell me, 10% will be, just do 10%. We don't think 10% should be the goal. We think that 25% should be the goal. And there's a reason behind that.
By the way, don't just take our word for it. Take an active role in actually figuring out. And we give you the tools. This is why I love what we do here at the Money Guy Show is we actually put pen to paper and create plans and show the numbers to you. We're very transparent. We eat our own cooking. But if you go to moneyguy.com/resources and you ask yourself, how much did you save? We actually have a resource that'll show you what can 25% do for you. And what it takes into account is, what's your age? Meaning, how much time do you have ahead of you? What's your savings rate? What can you expect that to produce in income replacement or retirement replacement ratios in the future? Don't just take somebody's word for it. Take the active role and actually look at the data and see what you need for your financial life.
Okay, Brian. So I'm sold. I'm going to save 25%, but I happen to be a higher income individual. So I've done the Roth IRAs and I've done the HSAs and I've done the max out the 401k and I still haven't hit my 25%. The next question you need to answer is, okay, well, do I need to open a brokerage account? Or why might that be something exciting to open? Because it's not tax advantaged and tax free like a Roth necessarily. And I don't get a tax deduction for money that I put in there. So what are the benefits of a brokerage account?
Well, what I like is, first of all, there are no limits. So if you're playing catch up, you need to put extra money into an account, with Roth IRAs, even your 401ks, they're all going to get to a point where they say, no more, you can't put any more money in this. The good thing is with after-tax money, you get to load it up. There's nobody who's going to limit how much you can put in these accounts. That's a powerful opportunity.
Another big benefit is while you don't get a tax deduction when you put money in, and it doesn't necessarily grow tax-free, there are still some tax advantages. If you save into an investment account, into a brokerage account, and you invest those dollars, and you hold the things that you invest in long-term, those holdings will be subject to long-term capital gains rates, which are currently lower than ordinary income tax rates. So even though it's not growing tax-deferred necessarily, and you're not going to be tax-free, it is still tax-favored and tax advantage. So it still might make sense to save money here because you can still do it in a pretty tax efficient way moving forward.
And I like that there's no early withdrawal penalty. And this is going to serve you in multiple ways. If you're one of these people that is part of the FIRE movement, or what I like to call the FINE movement, the next endeavor, not necessarily retiring early, you might need access to this money pre-55 for 401ks or 59.5 for IRAs. Well, if that's you and you need the bridge account, you're going to love that these don't have an early withdrawal penalty. If you're somebody who considers yourself a fancy investor and wants to get into real estate, you're going to love the after-tax account because you can get access to these assets for future investment opportunities without penalty. That's a powerful thing.
Super powerful. Another little small tax tidbit is there is a unique opportunity that if you happen to be in a certain income threshold, if your AGI is under $47,000 for single individuals or under $94,000 for individuals that are married filing jointly, you might be able to recognize capital gains inside of your taxable account and pay 0% tax rate. That's right, 0% long-term capital gains tax rate if you fall in those income thresholds. So as we come to the end of the year, you're going to want to look and say, okay, where was my income for the year? Where do I fall? Might it make sense for me to think about accelerating some of those gains, paying 0% tax, resetting my bases, reinvesting, redeploying those dollars? It's a great benefit and tool that's available inside of taxable brokerage accounts. All right, Brian, so now let's talk about so we talked about a lot of like the blocking, tackling, a lot of logistics. Now let's talk about some of the, I don't want to say more fulfilling because it's all fulfilling, but some of the exciting stuff, what you like to call the abundance goals.
Yeah, these are prepaid future expenses is the official title, but I do like to call them the abundance goals because this is the exciting thing. Often if you have your favorite dance move, this is the time to probably celebrate because you are walking into that abundance phase of life.
Do you have a favorite dance move?
I mean, I actually have put some thought into this, and I could do the backwards worm. But now that I'm old, I think I'd hurt myself.
Honestly,
so I wish I'd have learned a better move. Like if I'd have learned Running Man, it would have served me much better than doing the wormwood.
If you subscribe right now to the channel
do that.
And we get to 1 million subscribers, Brian will do a backwards worm. We'll put it on the socials. Make sure you subscribe right now.
But it is one of those things where I think about, because a lot of people, we take some flack for this, is that we put in step 8, or these prepaid future expenses, this is when you get to take care of the kids. This is because look, your kids can get student loans, your kids can get scholarships, they can get grants. There's no grants for retirement. There's no scholarships for retirement. So you've got to make sure You take care of your financial life. Just like on the airline, and the flight attendant says, put on your mask before you help out your children. It's the same way with your personal finances. Do not miss out on this moment.
And so as you're thinking about it, taking care of your kids, assuming that you've taken care of yourself first, might mean saving in a 529 for future college expenses. Or it might be getting them excited about building their financial future and opening custodial Roth IRAs and teaching them the power of tax-free growth. Or maybe it's just to fund future expenses like wedding rings or like first homes or like first cars. And you might just want to open an Upman or Ugman account so that you can begin teaching your children how to become financial mutants. Because one of the greatest gifts that you can give them, more than money, more than resources, more than inheritance, is teaching them how to build their own wealth for the future.
So after you take care of the kids, I do like in step 8, it's the abundance goals, is if this is where you fancy yourself wanting to get into real estate, you're not faking it now. So, because the thing is with real estate, a lot of times it's leveraged debt, meaning you are borrowing money to buy the real estate. You need to have a good financial foundation underneath you in case things just got ugly. And that's why I love, this is a great stage to consider real estate. This is also, if you want to increase your lifestyle, this is the one where you're not faking it until you make it. You actually can afford to drive the nicer car, maybe have a little bit nicer house. You can make these consumption decisions because you didn't sacrifice building wealth because you had steps 1 through 7 working in the background.
And as you're doing that, you get to begin to have the question, begin to answer the question, what is abundance for me? What does that look like? What are the things that I do value? What are the goals that I am working towards? What do I want my financial life to look like both now and in the future? As you've worked through the financial order of operations, you're getting into step 8, this is where you begin to focus on some of those things. This is where those types of things that can begin to take shape. And one of those things that may come up that you may be interested in is the very next step. Okay, should I consider now, I've done all the stuff that I've wanted to do, now should I just start de-risking my life? Should I consider paying off that low interest debt, thinking about knocking out the mortgage, being completely debt-free?
Yeah, this is definitely one of those risk analysis, and a lot of people at year-end do get bonuses and other things, so you have a little bit more windfall money or margin to make this decision. My thing is, I just want to make sure it ties into the financial order of operations. The majority of you still have mortgages with interest rates that are less than what cash is paying, meaning they're less than 4.5% if you were maximizing that cash moment. Well, that's the point where you better make sure you're checking the list off. And here's the 2 things that we always share. Financial order of operations, this is a step 9. I know that differs from some other systems out there. It's because I think you've got to make sure you make the wealth before you focus on maintaining the wealth by de-risking. And a lot of people never get through the make or get wealthy phase. They're already trying to de-risk. And that breaks my heart when they're in their 20s, when they're in their 30s. That's why the second thing we always share with people is it needs to be age 45 plus. And you say, why? Well, here's why. Every dollar for a 20-year-old has the potential to become $88. Every dollar for a 30-year-old has the potential to become $23. Every dollar for a 40-year-old is $7. Every dollar for a 50-year-old is $3. Do you see what happens? The degradation of compounding growth is going to be rapid. So there's a time to make and build, and then there's a time to maintain and keep safe. I just want to make sure you get that in the right order so you don't shortchange your future self.
I love it. And as we're thinking about 9 things that you may want to do before 2024 ends, or 9 things you may want to think about, one that we always want to remind you of is remember generosity. Remember, if you are in a place where you've done all the stuff that you've wanted to do, if you've been able to build the life that you want to build, are there ways that you can give back? Are there ways that you should begin thinking about not only making the wealth, not only maintaining the wealth, but ultimately multiplying the wealth? And specifically, as it relates to year end, are there unique strategies you could be employing? Should you think about using a charitable giving fund? Should you donate appreciated securities so that you can itemize your deductions this year? Are there tax-favored, tax-advantaged ways that you could even satisfy your goal of being generous?
Hey, and don't forget, let's clean out the closet. We're year end here. You still got a little time ahead of you. Go ahead and save you a few bucks and do some good. Go donate some clothes, donate some things that are laying around the house. And this is one of those things, when I was writing Millionaire Mission, I made sure, because I think generosity is such a powerful thing, that this is a ground rule. This isn't step 10 of the financial order of operations. This is actually something you should put. It's an umbrella that sits on top of the financial order of operations. Generosity should be something we all practice, because here's what I like about when you're generous is in a lot of ways it lets you get outside of being selfish, and it lets you focus on the selfless, because a big thing that I hope all financial mutants realize is that money is a tool. It's not a goal. If you don't tie into what's your why, what's abundance for you, and have purpose with everything that you're doing in your financial life, I think you're missing out on a lot. Make sure you go to moneyguy.com to just check out all the things we have. If you want free stuff, because I love giving out the free stuff, go to moneyguy.com/resources. But we love loading you up. I'm your host, Brian Preston, Mr. Bo Hansen, Money Guy team. Out.